Question is, do you ask the client how much profit they make on each customer? This could come up in an attempt to explain how much value your work is going to be for the client. For example, you can expect 10% increase in customers with your work. Therefore, you will make XYZ profit after paying for your work. Great question. So let's set the context here. What this person is asking is, how do you determine value in a sales conversation when someone has reached out to you or you've reached out to someone and you're trying to decide if there's a good fit between the business outcomes that they're trying to create and the skill set that you have, whatever your expertise is. And if you're going to price your work based on the value to the client, you have to figure out how much it's probably going to be worth to the client. And then you set your price at a fraction of that value. So if you determine that the project that you've been asked to quote is roughly in the $100,000 range, then you're pretty safe. If you send in a quote for $10,000, it's pretty much a done deal that you're going to get that. And if you can accomplish that, and the client is not going to care how long it takes to accomplish that, the faster the better. So if you can do the project for $10,000 and it only takes you a weekend, and they're highly confident that that this is like a $100,000 win for them, they're going to say yes all day long. They're probably not even going to look around for somebody else. So how do you figure out that value? This is definitely more art than science, but the way that I do it is I go into the sales meeting. So we've communicated over email or something initially. We've agreed to have a phone call and see if there's a good fit. We get on the phone and we'll start off by, I'll just trigger like a brain dump type of thing for them. We'll say, well, tell me everything you can about this project. What's the situation? What do you think you need done? And for 15, 20 minutes, they're going to tell me everything about the project. Well, we started the business in 1975 and then, sold it to the son and blah, 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 on down to fun. And now finally mobile's this new thing. And we're getting like 90% drop off in our mobile conversions. And the desktop site is doing much better conversion wise, but as time goes on, we see more and more of our traffic is on mobile. So we're scared. And I'll say, okay, let's back up for a second. And, why do this now? I mean, did you just find out that this was happening? Is this something that has been going on for a long time, or did you just discover it? And they'll say, well, no, we've been watching it for a while and it just seems to be getting worse. It seems to be picking up. And I'll say, well, why can't you wait? Why can't you wait a little longer to do this? Why not study it for 6 months and then do it, later? And they'll say, no, it's really looking scary. It's really starting to spike up. We're getting complaints. One of our competitors just redid their website and it's really sweet on mobile. We're imagining that they're eating our lunch. Okay, so now I've determined from them by asking them why do this now that it's important. It's an urgent project for them. Then I'll say, well, why do it like this? Why, you've sort of prescriptively instructed me to do a bunch of very specific things, over email and in this conversation previously. Isn't there some other way you could solve this? Isn't there some off-the-shelf service that you could use, and just sort of migrate your entire web presence over to? It might be a lot cheaper than hiring somebody expensive like me to, manually handle this for you or to manage your team on a rebuild or a redesign. And I'll get at why they think they want to solve the problem in this particular way. What other things have they considered? Are there any cheaper options that they've already ruled out? That's the thing I'm really looking for. So what cheaper options have they already ruled out? Or really what all else have they ruled out? So that's why do this specifically. And then the last thing I'll ask is, why have someone like me do this? Why not, why hire an outside consultant? I'm going to be really expensive. This project's going to be probably pretty big. It's going to be at least a big investment for you guys. Why not do it internally? You mentioned in your brain dump that you have some internal developers. Why not just have them do it? And they'll tell you why. They didn't not think of that. They will say, well, we thought about that, but they're super busy building features for our customers and we don't want to pull them off of that to sort of redo our marketing experience. Okay, well, why don't you outsource it to a place that has low cost of living and get cheaper developers? Oh, we tried that in the past and the time zone thing was a real problem it took 5 times as long as we hoped it would, and it cost twice as much, so we didn't really end up saving anything in the long run. We want to do this right the first time. It's a very risky project, and we need to get it done quickly, so we want someone that's in the same time zone, that speaks the same language, that there's not going to be any communication breakdown, nothing lost in translation. And they'll tell you all these reasons, whatever they are. So what you've done there, you've just had a why conversation. Why this, why now, and why me? And you've gotten answers to every single one of those questions. You say, okay, I think there's a good fit here. You've kind of tried to talk them out of working with you. And you are now convinced that there's probably a good engagement here. They have convinced themselves that they should hire you at this point. The only thing that's outstanding is they don't know how much it's going to cost, or perhaps when you can do it. So the next step is to say, okay, well, what's, you're already going to know the objective of the project. The objective of the project is to achieve some business outcome, make the increased mobile conversions in this case, but you'll have determined some business outcome, an outcome that the CFO is going to understand, an outcome that the CEO is going to understand, not something that only the lead developer is going to understand, like technical debt or something like that. They're going to understand a business outcome for this engagement. So you say, okay, we all know that we want to increase the conversion rate on mobile. We know that's critical for your business. We know that you need to do it right now because your competitor is hot on your heels. You've tried outsourcing before. You don't want to do that. You need to nail this right away, right out of the gate. Okay. So how are we going to measure progress as we execute the project? How are we going to measure progress so that we know we're getting closer and closer to the goal? How are we going to steer this car as we go along? You must be tracking some metrics because you know it's in a bad way, right? Client, you know that your mobile conversions are bad. Whatever reason they know they have a problem is because they measured something. So you say, okay, what can we measure along the way to determine that we're getting closer and closer to the desired outcome? So, and they'll know, they'll tell you, they'll say, oh, this. Say, okay, that's what we're going to track along the way. And what's that at now? Like what are the actual numbers involved so we know when we're getting close? And they'll start telling you dollar amounts. They'll tell you specific percentages. And you're going to get a sense of the overall value to the organization of this thing, at least in your mind. So perhaps they could have a skewed perspective of it, but in terms of top line revenue, you're going to get a basic sense through a conversation like this that, well, they get 10,000 visitors per month. They're losing 10,000 abandoned shopping carts per month. Average cart size is $40. You do the math in a month. You know, if this works, then their revenue, not their profit, but their revenue is going to jump way up if you can move this needle at all. So then you say, all right, what would be a home run for you guys? If I want to knock this out of the park for you guys. So what would be a home run percentage change? And they'd say something like, oh man, if you get conversions even up 10%, we're going to send you Christmas presents for the rest of your life or whatever. We're going to build a statue of you in front of the building if you could get those conversion rates up 10%. So by this time, you're going to know everything you need to know, or as close as you need to know it, to come up with a rough ballpark order of magnitude idea of what the annualized first year value to the business is of this project that they want you to do. And then you say, okay, if I set my price at like a fifth or a tenth of that, they're almost certainly going to say yes, because after this phone call, they trust me even more than they did before they contacted me. So I feel like I have a rapport with the people. They're going to believe that I can do it. I know they believe I can do it. So, can I do this job for 10% or 20% of what I guess is the value? And if you can, then it's a slam dunk. You say, all right, in the proposal, you say, look, based on our conversation, I don't know for sure, but I'm estimating roughly that you're going to increase your revenue by $10,000 a month. And at the end of a year, that's $120,000. I can do this project for you for $12,000. I can start in 2 weeks, and it should be done probably in 2 months. They're not going to ask you how many hours you're going to put in. They're going to be like, $12,000? Yeah, definitely. So the flip side of this is, how long is it going to take you to do it? So what's interesting about giving fixed prices and pricing based on value is that you can get really creative about how you achieve that stated goal, that desired outcome. You don't have to be like, oh, well, I have to do, this many layouts and this many database tables, and I have to do this many fields in each table, and I have to set up a bump. None of that matters. I mean, it doesn't not matter, but it doesn't matter in terms of setting your price. If you think that you can do something to get all of this done for them and achieve this outcome for them in a weekend, they're still going to give you that $12,000. So, okay. Let me look back at the question quickly and make sure I actually answered it. Yeah, okay. I'll add one last thing. I usually don't get super explicit with my questions about dollar amounts because I don't have to. Because usually by going through a why conversation like I just described, they're going to reveal that information anyway. They kind of have to. Like, you need to ask questions like, well, how much traffic is the web server going to get? Things like that. It's reasonable to ask those things. So you're going to end up having probably an idea. If you get to the end of the conversation and you have no idea what the value is, then you can say something like, look, you guys, I would love to do this project with you. I'm confident that what am I trying to say? I'm confident that I can do it. I'm qualified to do this for you. I've got lots of experience doing this, and especially in your industry or whatever. But I just don't see why you would do it. I'm not seeing the business case for you guys to pay me $1 million to do this project for you guys. And I specifically would say $1 million. And even though I've never charged that much for a project, just to throw a really high number out there to get them thinking like, wow, this could be expensive. And then get them to sit back and think, well, I mean, they'll say $1 million. Like, well, I'm just saying it's going to be an expensive thing to do. It's going to take a lot of money, and it's going to take a lot of time of your internal employees because it's going to be a collaboration, and we'll probably have to hire some outside parties to manage it. I mean, to work on it while I manage it. So I just don't see the business case. Can you help me understand why this makes any sense to invest, all what is going to be a lot of time and money into this project? And that might shake loose the answer that you're looking for. Well, they'll say something at that point that was so obvious to them, but totally unclear to you, that they'll just sort of vomit out like this, oh, well, we're losing $1 million a day, or something like that. If all else fails and you still don't have a sense of it, you can pull out the sort of emergency, you can break glass in case of emergency and just be like, look, you guys, I'm not seeing a business case here. I'd love to work with you on this. I'll put a proposal for you together, but what do you, like, roughly how much are you looking to invest in this? Because that'll help me scope the proposal in a way that's not going to waste our time going back and forth. So you can basically come out, don't ask them for the budget, ask them how much they want to invest in solving this problem or capturing this opportunity. How much do you want to invest? I don't really care what the budget is. You just ask how much they're willing to invest in it. And I've only had to do that once, and it was actually with someone I was really close with, a client I was really close with. And I was like, Jim, can we just cut to the chase? Like, how much do you guys want to invest in this? And I'll just tailor what I do to get as close to the goal as I can for that much money. And he was like, all right, it's X. And that works too. So a couple of different strategies for you there.